What happened? I was watching Veep like several years ago, and there's an episode um where Selena, Julia Louis Dreyfus, is where her staff, like one of them's in big trouble, and then that one goes to another one and is like, "Will you back me?" And that one's like, "I'm not going to back you." And then the three of them get together and get this clever idea to all threaten to quit. And they called it a suicide pact, which I had never heard before. So anyway, it was funny when I watched it. It was not funny when it was done to me. So here's what happened. So again, I came in as an estimator in the summer of 2016 into a mason restoration business. And uh, I did not know anything, and I mean anything, about construction, bricks, mortar, block, stone, knew nothing. And but I knew business. And so because I knew business, I was able to like help with the business part of the business, because as some of you might know from experience, knowing knowing your trade, right? Knowing what you deliver for your customers and then how to run your business are two very different things. Um, so anyway, so I was okay at the business part, and so I helped a lot with that, and 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 so because of that, I was able to like really take over and run the operation like as a chief operating officer. And we owed a lot of money, and so I restructured all the company's debt and got some working capital. And so then, because of all those things, I came in, and it was the first year the company had made money in 3 years, I think. My first year in the business, and then and then so I took over as CEO because I had a vision for the way things could be, even though I still didn't know a lot about construction. I was kind of figuring it out pretty quick. So the owner, to his credit, gave me, well, to his credit, based on my future results, not based on those results. So the owner, took a flyer on me, and, he, put me in as CEO. So, it didn't go well. And I mean, it went really, really, really bad, because, the business didn't have a marketing machine. It didn't a marketing machine. We sent out these, we would print off on 8.5 by 11, which I'm sure is a lot of people do, print off on 8.5 and 11. We would print off like a, marketing piece, and then we send them out, very manual, very low, like very, very, very low return. But we did get calls, um, and so that was our entire marketing system, practice. Um, and to be honest, I didn't understand it. Two, I didn't like it. And so, and we weren't getting calls. So that the spring of 2017, we're getting nothing. And, I had owned a business prior to this, and, hadn't had the experience of like not having any money coming in, because my business that I owned was a recurring revenue business. So every month, or every quarter, actually, we charged fees. So, if we lost a customer, we had time to replace that customer, and it makes sense. Anyway, so I hadn't worked in like a eat what you kill business before, like this, like the masonry business. So we weren't getting calls, and I didn't have a network of contractors to go to. So I went to the public, public job forums. I can't remember. Dodge was one we went to. There's one in PA Builders Exchange maybe. And we signed up for those, and I started bidding public jobs. And you know, I could literally sit here and list off. I couldn't remember the jobs today, but there were these big jobs that we bid, that I personally bid, and I'm so glad we didn't get them. But we did that summer. I did win a couple, and I was so excited that I won these jobs. And it was about $500,000, $600,000 worth of work, both public. And so we started, the one was a very large school, and it was out in BFE. I mean, it was way out. So the business was in like sort of central western, or is in central western Pennsylvania. This was like southwestern, like almost to the Ohio border. So it was like 2 hours 10 minutes from the shop. So, and then I got another one that was also in BFE, and so things were not going well. So on the first job, on the school job, we by December, we started in July. By December, we were losing somewhere between 250 and $300,000, which we didn't have to lose. And and it was, I mean, it was rough. I mean, because we didn't have any money. Then of course, the general, I mean, it was like, it was almost comical how bad it was. And not only were we losing money, but then the general, they weren't doing well. So then they weren't paying us on time. And I was literally having to track down the owner of the general contractor. In fact, the owner and I went on a Friday. Um, he brought the paychecks from from the office, and we met at that general contractor's office, and went and basically sat in his lobby until he paid us. I'm not making this up. So it was rough. And I had come into, I didn't hire the people that were working for me. They were hired by the owner. And you know needless to say, I mean, it was hard. They weren't really my team, I guess I would say that. Um, and they weren't, they weren't, it didn't feel like they were pulling for me. So, and one in particular, and of course I won't say his name, but one in particular was, I mean, he had decided that I was like his mortal enemy, and he was going to do everything he could to like make my life miserable, and to like try to rally the troops against me. And he did. So towards the end of the year, it's December, I hadn't gotten paid in like about a month at that point, and maybe longer. Maybe it was three paychecks. I don't remember now, but I hadn't been paid. And we were getting killed. We're, coming up, or we're, on paper, this doesn't include the profit we should have made. On paper, we were, losing about 300 grand. And, I got a weird call. The owner, he was kind of being weird on the phone. Like, hey, can you come into the office? And da 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 da. And that's when I knew, like, oh, I'm going in to get fired. Like, this isn't like a, hey, rally the troops meeting. This is he's firing my ass. So I was like, yeah, sure. Like, so I went in, and his wife showed up. Like, he didn't tell me, which, I mean, I can't blame him. I don't know that I would have done the same thing, but I can't blame him for doing that. So she shows up. So we meet in his office, and, you know, and it was, and so they're not really saying anything. So, and I said, well, I decided, like, you know, I think I can be, this is just me in my head. I'm thinking, I think I can be good at this. I wasn't doing very good at the time. I mean, it wasn't as if every decision I made was terrible. I'd built a lot of relationships over my first year and a half. And actually we were bidding some interesting work, but the bad was far outweighing the good. So, but, and I will say this, I was, I mean, I was 41 at the time, or 40, 41. And, I had far too much confidence for a guy that didn't know anything. So, or knew very little. So I sat down and I said, okay, so there's one of two conversations we're having. Either we're having the, I'm exiting and let's figure that out, or we're having the, like, we're going to figure this out and let's figure that out. But let's decide which conversation we're having right now, which I don't think they were expecting me to say that. So, he said, well, I think we should have the conversation about figuring this out. I said, okay, then let's do that. So we had that conversation, and so he didn't fire me. And it did not get better. So that's the punchline to that, or the conclusion to that story, is it did not get better for the next year. Because we continued to bid to people we shouldn't be bidding to, quite frankly. And not that they were bad customers, they just weren't good customers for us. So, needless to say, the guy that sort of had put all this together, and it was literally like, just so we're clear, it was all of the key people in the front office. So it was the admin, bookkeeper, second admin, and the other estimator. And like, literally everyone but the owner, went to the owner. Wasn't the guys in the field, although they weren't big fans either. They just weren't in on it. But like, literally the entire front office went to the owner and said, if you don't fire him, we're quitting. Well, he called their bluff and they didn't quit. The one that had kind of put the mutiny together was pretty angry, especially when he had to pay me, because I was like, I'm not leaving this office without a fucking paycheck. So I got my paychecks that day and kept my job. So like I said, it did not get better. 2018 was not as bad, but was pretty rough. And, I didn't have then, so that was 2017 and 18. I did not have the map that I have today. That was really me figuring out, as the CEO, how to, one, run a successful masonry restoration business, and also turn around one that was really, really struggling, because all of the work that I put into in 2016 into recapitalizing the company's debt, we took on another, I don't know, 400,000 we owed to vendors, and borrowed even more money went back to the loan sharky, high interest, unsecured type loans. And again, I'm not going to call these guys out. You know who they are. They call you guys. I'm sure they call you too. Anyway, it did not get better. It got worse. And it was probably, outside of the personal trouble I had with my divorce and losing everything and being homeless. It was the next hardest thing I'd ever done, because I was having to learn and also fix this thing. Like, it's like, it'd be like driving a car 65 miles an hour down the highway and like playing with like the shift, transmission to make sure that it goes into the next gear. It was hard and be perfectly honest, scary at times. But my obsession with achieving, and really like I wouldn't say achieving, that's so, I don't like that word, but like my obsession with finding a solution, delivering for people, because I'm looking around at, I wasn't particularly fond of the front office team, and ended up replacing most of them over the next couple of years, but and not out of spite. We had a lot of gaps, but needed a different level of skill as the business grew, which it did grow. But I wasn't bitter. I certainly didn't appreciate that, but I learned, and then just wouldn't let myself give up. Right. So, the gift in that whole thing was that, one, it kind of like, it really, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of crystallized the relationship with the owner and I, because it was like, it was do or die, right? It was either we deliver or, that this is it. And like I said, it did get worse. It got a lot worse for the next year. In fact, at the end of 2018, we had lost another, I think, 250 or so thousand. So lost like between 800 and 900,000 over those 2 years, 17 and 18. And I mean, I went for the longest I've ever gone without a paycheck. I went from, I want to say mid-December of 18 till almost June of 2019 without getting a pay, just living off of our savings, you know. So it was not easy. But during that, like that was actually in that first part of 19, actually I'd kind of figured out some things. And so here was the playbook I used. And at the time, I didn't know it was a playbook. It was just what made sense to me. So, you know, powering through the suicide pact and powering through, you know, other bad decisions that I made, that the owner made. You know, here's how I attacked things. And it was really like kind of like it was like three things. And again, I didn't know this at the time. I figured this out by doing it. So the first problem I saw was that our pricing, well, it wasn't a process. We just, I mean, there was no, every bid we would be calling vendors for pricing and, you know, like building it. And it wasn't, and our products and our materials weren't like, you didn't need to do that. But every time we were having to get quotes, and I thought, this is crazy, you know, no database of information. And, you know, so that, I mean, it took, you can imagine, you know, it took a lot of time. I mean, you could imagine, because you probably do it too, or have done it. So, it was, I mean, you know, the owner and the other estimator were on, you know, like legal pads and like, you know, on like a calculator or a calculator on their phone. And I'm just, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, the number of errors that, you know, like there's so many ways to make mistakes doing this. So the first thing I did was tackle the pricing, because there was no real organization other than we had a standard markup, and there were some standards as far as like labor, but even that, it was like iffy if we were getting it right on our labor cost and whatever else. So I tackled pricing first. So I created a standardized pricing process. That was the very first thing that I did. The next thing I did was made a blacklist of, you know, the customers I did not want to do business with, that were not going to be good for our business. And again, this is not I mean, there were some specific people, because there were, you know, a couple GCs that frankly screwed us, and, you know, I wouldn't, you know, I mean, I would never do a job with them ever again. And, you know, that, I think everyone's had that experience, but it was really more of a blacklist about like, you know, of customer types, you know, or demographics or avatars, you know, like certain types of jobs, certain types of customers. So for example, so we stopped bidding public jobs because, you know, again, a lot of you probably know this if you do public work, but, you know, in public commercial, which is all commercial, public commercial jobs, you know, we were private, so we were non-union. So we were having to literally double our labor rates, and then, you know, trying to make a margin on, and then, you know, trying to make a margin on top of that, just that alone was I mean, it was almost impossible. It wasn't impossible, but it was, our margins, as you can imagine, all the margins we would have made, we were paying for in labor. I'm not saying it's wrong. It just wasn't going to, you know, our overhead at the time was far too high for us to build. We couldn't afford it. We literally couldn't afford to do those jobs. And so, and I had done you know, over my first 2.5 years, I had done, I don't know, half a dozen of them, and they sucked. Like they really sucked. And we lost money and or didn't cover overhead, you know, I mean, nearly every time. It was rare that we actually covered overhead and like broke even and then actually made a profit on that. So I was like, no more public. And, you know, the other part of it, again, for those of you who've done public jobs, the other part of that was that you have like considerably more like oversight, which is not a bad thing. It's not bad to have oversight, but like, you know, everyone's up in your shit. So you've got the architect and the owner, and then you've got the general. I mean, so when you're a sub on a public job, even if you're the only sub, I mean, you know, it was a structure that, you know, unless you're working with really highly competent people, which some of the times we were not, it's really, I mean, you burn so much time. So we were burning time on the administration of these jobs, and then we're getting killed on labor. And then, and then there's a lot of restrictions as well on materials as well. So I mean, it was just like literally like we did not have a business that could go after those jobs and succeed. So it wasn't a good customer for us. So anyway, I made a blacklist of all the jobs we would not bid, like not even bid, not go look at and go, maybe, maybe not. Like it was like, if this, if this job lead comes in, with this, and this, no, it's a hard no, it's a hard pass. And, the owner would call me and he'd be like, hey, we got to, it's a historical restoration. And I'd be like, okay, is it private or public? Public. Okay. Well, like, what's the likely outcome there? And well, it's in this particular, it's county or whatever. And so I had to literally like, kind of like, I'd say coach or like retrain him. Like, we can't do these jobs. We know what happens when we do them. And if if you replace that job, like let's say best case scenario, we make a 3 to 5% net profit on that job. I mean, on a private job, we would literally make 15 to 20% or more sometimes. So it was like, so I made a list of like hard no, like everyone inside of this, like this group here is a no, we don't bid them. And then the last thing was, I actually replaced the negative Nancy's. So, we had one person that was very senior in the front office, and, even after we literally had made almost $2 million in net profit over 2 years. And it was clear that the business was going in a different direction. And this, person would still badmouth me. I mean, literally would run around the office screaming about, stuff that I did that pissed him off. And that obviously, that wasn't okay. So, so we got rid of I replaced the people that were negative, bad gas, not competent, that couldn't do the job, because I wanted to have people in there that could run. I mean, the business was doing, what was it? Probably averaging right around $1 million when I came in. We did almost 2 my first year. When I left, we were doing between 3.5 and 5. So, like I knew we needed a different team. And so I, started like, improving the quality of our people. That was you think that's first, but that was actually like, we had to fix the pricing part first, then figure out who's going to pay for what we're going to charge. And then I actually like went and sort of like worked on the hiring thing. So, as far as like replacing people and whatnot, and that was my map. So, and that worked. So come to find out, here's the sort of like PS. So now I didn't realize that was a thing. Like now I come to find out, like that's the way a lot of turnaround people attack like a business like, like the one that I took over, where it was in real rough shape and needed to be, needed a lot more than just like more sales, to succeed. So anyway, so one thing that, one thing that I'm going to leave you with today, is I saw this, I think it was Tim Ferriss. I saw this, one of his guests was talking about this on his podcast, and this is so good. So for owners out there in our group that are, catching this now, we've got a few people on right now or catching it, later. So I love this, because this is, I love things that like break, because some of these ideas, when you talk about pricing, that's a big thing to sort of tackle, but I like simplifying this stuff. So like with respect to people, and I didn't know this then, but I love this. And this, now I think like this now. So this guy put together, the guest on his show, like has a simple, actually he shared it, simple matrix for, people like your employees. So there's 4, like break him down to like 4 categories. So the first category is can do the job, will do the job. So these are generally your producers, right? These are your people, whether they're in an actual production role or whether in a support role. These are your people that are going to deliver because they can do it and they want to do it. They will do it, right? So for them, it's like coach them, keep, support them, celebrate with them, coach them up, give them more responsibility. Like, these are the people that are going to be your leaders, really, like that everyone else is following, because like they know it and they will do it. The next group is your can't and will. So these are people that like they can't do the job yet, but they want to do the job. They're willing. They'll put in the work. They've got the work ethic. They've got the follow through. And these are the people that you coach really hard, and you coach and you just water and water, like just, give them a lot of support so that they then learn the competency, right? Learn how to do it. And then of course, these are your people that are going to be loyal forever, because not only did you teach them and you were patient with them and supported them, but now they're likely having more monetary success, and it's like a more meaningful experience because they sort of learned from you, right? The next group is can but won't. And this is, these are your negative Nancy's. These are your people that like have a very, very, very short runway, right? It's like, if you can do the job, it's one thing to, not be able to do it. But if you can do this, like if you have the skills and you're choosing not to, I'm not saying we fire everybody, but like this person needs to know, like, this is what's expected of you. This is what's required. And like, if someone is going to continue to like not do the work while they have the competency, like that kills morale. And I mean, I've had those people, you have those people, like those people, again, it's a short fuse. It's a short path until they're on some sort of a production, basically like a, production. What am I trying to, what I'm saying? Where they're put on production goals, like where probation basically. So it's either like you do it or we're going to have to like, you take them through the, termination process. And then there's can't and won't. And again, it's a similar thing. If they can't do the job and, they don't have the skills and they don't want to do the job. So we're going to coach these people and we're going to give them a shot, but then they're going on a production goal. And like, if they learn, if they start moving towards from can't, and they still won't do it, then it's, if they're not doing the job because they can't do it, it's one thing. If they're not doing the job because they can, as they learn the skill and they still choose not to do it, then again, those people have to be put on a probation, a production goal, and you got to replace them. So anyway, so, I'm sharing these things because, we want to, Jay and I we want to create a, a place where, it's not just me talking, it's not just him talking, it's not just us talking, but where everyone can come and, share things like this. Because, I personally have learned a lot from others, other people that did it before me or did something, right before me. I learned that way. And I think a lot of us learn that way. So, I'm going to be on here again every Monday, telling some of these crazy ass stories. And also kind of, again, giving the plays, like giving away the plays, like, like I shared today about how to tackle. I mean, if you're struggling too, I started with pricing because that you again, that's a fundamental thing. If you're not pricing your jobs right, you're fucking dead, man. Like, it's the quickest way to die. So, again, my approach was pricing, and then it was pricing, the right customer, which for me started with who I don't want to do business with. And then it was, getting the right people around me that actually got excited about what our vision was and where I wanted to take the company. So I'm going to be sharing these things every Monday, noon. Jay and I go live every Friday at 3. And again, we want this to be a place where it's not just us talking, but, we want you to share some of your stories. And I mean, you go live for 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I'll be right there cheering you on. So again, every Monday I'll be here at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Jay and I go live every Friday at 3. And if you have some comment, I mean, comment if if these are things you've struggled with, obviously comment or send me a DM or, comment on this or just post something, post a question. And, Jay and I are in there every day, love to, help where we can. So anyway, thanks guys for hanging out with me for a little bit. And I will see you next Monday.